All right, so it is Monday, December 9th, 6:04 a.m. We are continuing with our series in the Grip of ThermostatAnon, which is a justification, an explanation, analysis, and interpretation of the video that we put up, which was originally titled In the Grip of Q-MAGAnon, which was removed by ThermostatAnon. ThermostatAnon is our name for YouTube's censorship algorithm, and the justification that YouTube gave for the removal, the censorship of that particular video is right here. We have been arguing that contradistinctively and contrarily to what the claims for the removal are, as stated here in this email, that the video violates our policy on harmful conspiracy theories. It in fact does precisely the opposite, and as anyone who's paying attention to current politics will be aware, Donald J. Trump, president-elect, now promises to pardon all of the individuals involved in the violent insurrection and an attempt, right, to control the results of the fair election of 2020, which resulted in the election of President Biden, and continues to produce conspiracy theories involving the results of that election, and continued to produce them in the course of his 2024 campaign as well. And yet all of the actual proponents of such, conspiracy theories aren't censored on YouTube. So we find that there's a certain amount of irony in the fact that our investigation of the conspiracy theories and the violence that those conspiracy theories, produce and lead and produce and multiply, I suppose, among these various terrorist, domestic terrorist organizations. We find that there's a certain amount of irony in the fact that Rudy Giuliani has a YouTube site, but doesn't seem to fall under the conditions that allow ThermostatAnon to censor his content, while ours in fact is. And I guess that the irony that's been a part of this series from the outset, will continue on today. Today we are once again going to address some of the history of America's oldest living baby boy, Chad Wolf, former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. You'll recall that we mentioned in the course of this series, and probably elsewhere, that Kristi Noem, the governor of the past and present, I suppose, governor of South Dakota, is the new nominee for Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. We discussed why we find that problematic as well, and today we'll go back and explain some of the presentation in the meta-multi sci-fi comiverse surrounding Chad Wolf, and how the presentation and the structures and strategies and captions and images relate to various aspects of the work that he did under Trump, if you want to call it work, or the violence that he produced under Trump, and we'll go from there. So I think that's enough generalization about this series. Let's jump to the first image. All right, so I'll read the caption first, and then since I'm going to put a filter on this, the comic filter, since this is in one way or another a kind of a narrative that at least uses a lot of elements from different comic universes, and the comic filter seems to formally, I guess, underscore, that content. We've continued to use the comic filter, which which I like because it gives a visual interest in a certain way that might not have been there if we didn't have a filter, but which makes some of the scrutiny of the details of the physical images a little bit more difficult. So first to read the caption and then to discuss, the conjoinment of the images here. Twin aliens separated at birth are reunited in 2020, specifically for the purpose of destroying all remaining intelligent life in the Trump universe, formerly known as, quote, the United States of America, unquote. And I don't know if you can tell, but this isn't a single individual. This image is collaged from two separate, images of two separate individuals, and one of them, the one here on our right, I suppose, that makes it, his left. This one with the green eye is Mr. Chad Wolf, the oldest living, baby boy in the Trump universe. Any universe, I think, in the not only the Trump universe, formerly known as the United States of America, but also in the meta-multi, sci-fi comiverse as well, and whatever, authorizing universes, exist above and beyond that universe. The complex system of all known sci-fi and or non-sci-fi comic and or non-comic universes. I suppose he's the oldest living baby boy in all of that. And so this one has the green eye, and then I don't remember, I apologize, but I don't even remember who this actor is. He's a little bit more, you can see if I do this, right, and split him this way and split Chad this way, the actor is clearly a little bit more handsome than Chad Wolf is. Well, actually quite a bit more handsome than Chad Wolf. But I found an image that, that would work and gave him this, bifurcated physiognomy here. And I'll explain why, but first I just want to, make sure that I can point out, I don't know if, otherwise you'll even be able to see it, but this one has, this individual, the actor, has a brown eye. Mr. Wolf has a green eye over on this side. You can see that the lips are a slightly different shade. The mustache doesn't quite match up. It's or is that a mustache or just that Don Johnson Miami Vice unshaven look that's supposed to be cool that just looks like you don't know how to shave your own face. And then you can see like the hairline is a little different up here. The actor, the handsome actor, is a little darker skinned than Chad Wolf. I think everyone is though. I'm even probably darker skinned than Chad Wolf, and I'm pretty light skinned. So anyway, the hairline doesn't quite match up either. Chad's is a little tidier, I would say more conservative. This is a little looser and younger looking. I don't know, comparatively, if the actor is younger than Mr. Wolf or about the same age. But if I pan back, you see it's not, entirely a bad fit. And the claim that they're aliens separated at birth. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I'll put it all on the table, and then I'll investigate all of it, in more detail. But the first thing is this procedural psychological study manner of separating twins. I think it began in the 50s, but continued on into the 60s in the United States. I may be pushing it back a little bit too far, but there have been various studies, and they're all relatively unethical. This idea of separating a family pretty unethical. And to study, right, this what I would call rhubarb of rhubarbs. Okay, so let's break down what rhubarb of rhubarb means. I think in baseball slang, rhubarb can mean like an argument, like a heated discussion, like when the ref and a player get into an argument, or an owner gets into an owner with the referee. I think they call that a rhubarb. There's like a heated, shouting match. Sometimes it leads to pushing, and if, hopefully it doesn't lead to actual, blows. I guess it's all assaultive, but whether it involves battery or not, is something else. Maybe they call it something else if battery enters into the discussion. But that's so rhubarb in that sense means like argument or heated argument. So there's this argument, right? The nature versus nurture argument. That's the rhubarb. And what makes it a rhubarb of rhubarbs is, at least when I was growing up, this was the definition that I had for when my grandmother used the word rhubarb. I think she just meant nonsense. So it's an argument of over nonsense. This idea that you could define what makes a person, by studying nature, versus nurture. So, hence my expression, a rhubarb of rhubarbs, right? So anyway, there's that. And then I'm playing with this whole thing, intelligent life in the Trump universe. So Alien, takes on this characteristic of, he doesn't belong to, our, earthly existence, that he comes from another planet, or these twins actually came from another planet, and I guess one was left here somehow on planet Earth, or part of planet Earth in the Trump universe, and this one perhaps went elsewhere, whoever this part of the set of twins, played by the handsome looking actor here on this side, went somewhere else. And let's see what else. So there's the alien thing, there's that. Oh, and then we'll get to it, but the alien, and separated at birth, in a way, play to the reliance of some of these conspiracy theories on the Rupert Murdochian conspiracy theory universe, or universes, I guess. And I'm referring specifically to the New York Post, but to all, but to Fox News as well. I mean, they're conspiracy theory producing as well, and come up with a lot of like pretty incredible nonsense. So at some point we'll and I was thinking of that in terms of like the production of these weird stories in Weekly World News and the National Enquirer and some papers like that. We'll look up Weekly World News and compare the images of the covers and the kind of like stories they would have. Like they would have like an alien from another planet separated from birth, kind of conjoining those two kinds of weird stories together. And some of the headlines for the New York Post. And the New York Post had headlines and images you'll recognize immediately in the presentation of an image search, are a representation of this dichotomous black and white thinking, where everything that the Democrats do is a lie and evil, and everything that Trump does is wonderful and joyous, and it's completely partisan. And the fact that people like Jim Jordan utilized the New York Post. Did I say New York Post or Washington Post? I'm referring to the New York Post. I'm referring to Rhubarb Murdoch's ridiculous, excuse for media, the New York Post. And it's, if we imagine that, half of this guy was evil, which it is, right? This half is evil, and this half is, perhaps good. But in this one, that's not the case. I'm not doing that. I'm doing something else. But But of course, you know, the rhubarb Murdochs, or more, is it rhubarb Murdoch or rhubarb Morlock? Remember the Morlocks from the H.G. Wells novel, the Time Machine. So I think it's actually Morlock. So rhubarb Morlock's New York Post, consistently, presents, Trump as this glorious, hero figure, and whatever the Democrats are doing at any particular time as some kind of example of, an alien sent here, to destroy, planet Earth or whatever it might be, and that that people buy, this material either, in the form of rhubarb Morlock's New York Post, or in the form of, Fox News is remarkable to me, but offers, further, substantiating and, sufficiently compelling evidence that these twins separated at birth for the purpose of destroying all intelligent life in the Trump universe were, thoroughly successful in doing so, right? Okay, so the important, figure to keep in mind here is Mr. Wolf, Mr. Chad Wolf, and we'll just we'll backtrack a little bit in more detail from internet searches and sort of break down the individual elements that this is our site, contract and feed through Theta. We don't really need to see much of that today. Okay, so what I was saying was we'll get into more thorough detail about each of the elements that I kind of generalized about right there. Okay, so here's Identical Strangers, and this was a book that was written in 2007. Yes, the publication date is 2007, by Elise Shine and Paula Bernstein, and of course they were both born Bernsteins. I don't believe Elise. Well, let's read a little bit and then I'll start discussing. Identical Strangers, a memoir of twins separated and reunited, is a 2007 memoir written by identical twins Elise Shine, or maybe Sheen, and Paula Bernstein, and published by Random House. The authors, born in New York City in 1968 to Lita Witt, daughter of Nathan Witt, were separated as infants in part to participate in a nature versus nurture twin study. That's what I was talking about before, and I want to mention that these studies are, like many psychological studies, completely unethical and involve the separation of individuals that were born to the same mother and hence are sisters. And in the case of the triplet study, brothers, obviously. But another reason that this format is being played out in this particular frame and in relationship to the world's oldest living baby boy, Mr. Chad Wolf, is because of his policy of separating children from their parents, right? In his removal of asylum-seeking families in the United States, and his crackdown on individuals who the extreme right continues to refer to as the threat from without, I guess, since there's a threat from within, and it's kind of almost ironically sounds like without a threat. But these mothers and daughters and mothers and sons, that were such a terrible threat to the foundation of our democracy, unlike fascism, which is apparently not a threat, according to certain conspiracy theorists and this particular group of people, right? So that's another reason for this whole separated at birth thing, is to play out the relationship with these separated families that were children were separated from their mothers and fathers and then placed in cages, and there was a lot of backlash about that and an outcry from some individuals. We'll read an article as well when we get to that aspect. But this is, just all providing background. So around this same time, and I think I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but around this same time, I think either 2016 or 2017, a couple of documentary films came out, and there was some information in National Public Radio involving this book, even though it had been written, a few years earlier. But so after a course of 9 or 10 years, a film was made, in response to this memoir or autobiography of the two twins, written by Elsie Sheen and Paula Bernstein. Let's just call it Sheen, I guess, since we see the same form as in Bernstein. So Sheen and Bernstein, Elisa Sheen and Paula Bernstein, published by Random House. They were adopted by separate families in the New York area who were unaware that each girl had a twin sister. Soon after the twins reunited for the first time in 2004, at the age of 35, they began writing the book. Of the 13 or more children involved in the study, 3 sets of twins and 1 set of triplets have discovered one another. 1 or 2 sets of twins may still not know they have an identical twin. And as far as I know, Paula Bernstein is not related to either Charles Bernstein, the American language poet, or Charles Bernstein, the American horror film composer, who in fact are twins, separated. It's interesting that their name is both Charles, but they are in fact twins, separated at birth. And I guess in that particular study, on the nurture part, Charles Bernstein, the American language poet, was only provided avant-garde examples of poetry, whether European or American derived, and moved in that direction. The nurture led him into poetry, and Charles Bernstein, the horror film composer, was only entertained with examples of scary B movies and horror films, and I guess if you were going to fall on the nurture side, you would point to the fact that, well, one continued to work artistically in the domain of horror film music, so that was a nurture thing, and one stuck with the poetry, so that was a nurture thing too. But on the nature side, there's something kind of schmaltzy and shticky and what's the word I want, and campy, I guess, about both Charles Bernstein, the American language poet's poetry, and Charles Bernstein, the horror film composer's music, and so we could say that the study didn't find a solution to the rhubarb of rhubarbs, or at least not a compelling rhubarb. If there's another slang definition of rhubarb, maybe because it didn't find a rhubarb for the rhubarb of rhubarbs. I'm not sure if there is one that makes sense in relationship to that, but it sure would be nice if we could say didn't find a rhubarb for the rhubarb of rhubarbs, wouldn't it? Anyway, going back and maybe reiterating what we said, of the 13 or more children involved in the study, 3 sets of twins and 1 set of triplets have discovered one another. So all of these are 3 sets of was it 3 sets? Yeah, 3 sets of twins, and including, right, Elisa Sheen and Paula Bernstein, discovered one another, and then this set of triplet young men discovered one another. One or two sets of twins may still not know they have an identical twin, so there may be, and it's very likely that Chad Wolf does have an identical twin out there somewhere, and whether he's from a planet, outside our galaxy or not, remains to be seen. I guess, when the evidence comes in, we'll find that out. I'll read a little bit about the study because I think, the act of separating, family members from other family members is always a practice of cruelty, no matter, what name or function, it pretends, to have in relationship to either science or politics. So Viola Bernard, a prominent New York psychiatrist, had persuaded Louise Wise Services, an adoptive agency, to send twins to different homes without telling the adoptive parents that they were adopting a child who had a twin. Then researchers sponsored by the Jewish board, it's starting to sound like a conspiracy theory, isn't it? I mean, and it's this weird narrative that, like, it's like something that you could read in the Weekly World News or the New York Post, the Rhubarb Morlock paper, Rhubarb Morlock, that's not easy to say, Rhubarb Morlock's newspaper. Then researchers sponsored by the Jewish Board of Family and Children's Services secretly compared their progress. Bernard believed that identical twins would better forge individual identities if separated. That's a weird thing even to be concerned about. But by the time the twins started to investigate their adoptions, Bernard had already died. But the twins, and it just becomes more and more of a bizarre, tabloid, type story as it goes on, doesn't it? Bernard had already died, but the twins found New York University psychiatrist Peter Neubauer, who had studied them, and we're not going to click on that name because I'm afraid this is going to get too elaborate and spin out, into too many other universes. But the twins' study they were involved with was never completed. The practice of separating twins at birth ended in the state of New York in 1980, shortly after Neubauer's study ceased. Neubauer reportedly had Yale University lock away and seal the study. Gets weirder and weirder, doesn't it? Lock away and seal the study records until 2065. So we can all look forward to 2065 when Neubauer's study records are released. I guess he was pretty convinced that anybody that he that existed in his universe while he was alive would be gone by then, and so didn't have anything to worry about. It's weird. It's like one of these, like, Joseph Mengele experiments, right? Like that is conducted, right here, in our recent past in the United States of America. He realized that public opinion would be so against the research. Yeah, I wonder why. Because it's unethical. He realized that public opinion would be so against the research that he decided not to publish it. Didn't want the backlash, right? As of 2007, the sisters and other twins had not persuaded Yale or the Jewish board to release the records. By 2018, some 10,000 pages had been released, but were heavily redacted and inconclusive. Yeah, we know about those, like, kind of heavily redacted and inconclusive papers, don't we? The Neubauer study differed from most twin studies in that it followed the twins from infancy. However, the debate, what we've been calling the rhubarb, right, about whether nature or nurture had a great impact, or rather rhubarb of rhubarbs, nonsense, right? Heated argument about nonsense. The rhubarb of rhubarbs about whether or nature or nurture has a greater impact on human development continues. It's like what people can get locked into, right? And it's like, oh man, and you're gonna destroy human families and lives because of a rhubarb of rhubarbs. Seriously? The documentary Three Identical Strangers, which told the story of three male triplets who were also part of the study and found one another at age 19, noted that although much was made of superficial similarities among the three, their personalities were significantly different because they were raised by parents with profoundly different personalities and child-rearing practices. And then once again, going back to twins separated at birth, Charles Bernstein and Charles Bernstein. I mean, depending on what you look at, you can go either way, right? So Bernstein became a poet, and Bernstein became a horror film composer, horror film music composer. But and so that sounds like it's an urge thing. But if you look at like the style and the form and the I don't know, the I guess tone, right? Tone and manner of the thing, the schmaltzy, sticky, kind of like superficial, approach, as opposed to like a deep structure approach. Like, okay, so musically, like, who represents, for me, I mean, that's why I like, avant jazz, because it tends to be, written and performed by individuals who studied music. It tends to have a lot of structure. It tends to be well designed and well thought out, and doesn't scratch the surface, right? As opposed to tinkering on a Casio, right? And I guess what I'm saying about the music of Charles Bernstein and the poetry of Charles Bernstein, it has this like little tinkly kind of feel. So is that nurture or is that nature? Well, it depends on what you're looking at, right? Anyway, which is what makes it a rhubarb to begin with. It really depends more on what you're looking at, and so it depends more on you than it does on the subjects in the study, right? Like, because I could take three random people, and if I could convince you that these random people, were in fact, twins, like in this image, then I could, come up with a study, like, and analyze their personalities and prove that it goes one way or the other, and then that's what makes it a rhubarb, right? So anyway, it's more about those doing the analysis than it is about what's being analyzed, is what I'm saying. The documentary Three Identical Strangers, and then we got into our Charles Bernstein aside, which told the story of three male triplets who were also part of the study and found one another age thing, noted that although much was made of superficial similarities among the three, their personalities were significantly different because they were raised by parents with profoundly different personalities and child-rearing practices. In addition, no one can accurately assess to what degree each infant in the study was shaped by the trauma of separation. So here, there's an interesting admission that, there's trauma of separation. So the admission that even these individuals studying the set of triplets, right, admit that they were formed. There was a formative relationship to the trauma of separation, the initial trauma of separation. And it's like an admission within the study that the study itself like produces trauma, and that the family separation produces trauma. And I guess, that idea ties into the trauma of these, immigrant families seeking asylum in the United States, who were, brutalized by the practices of the Department of Homeland Security under Trump, and specifically under Chad Wolf, which we'll get to, right? After several months together as infants, some researchers believe that children's differences are forged less by their families than by genetics and chance. Contrasting neuroscience research, contrasting neuroscience research of the last 3 or 4 decades supports the claim that minds are formed through relationships. That seems reasonable, especially in the first 1,000 days of a child's life. In an interview with NPR to promote the production of Identical Strangers, Bernstein said, and that's, I don't believe either Charles Bernstein or Charles Bernstein, twins really do force us to question what it is that makes us makes each of us who we are since meeting Elise, it is undeniable that genetics play a huge role, probably more than 50%. Okay, I like the 50%, probably more than 50%. As if you could, as if there was a study that you could design that was so accurately presented and that would measure like the genetic component of your identity to a degree where you could define it in terms of a percentage, like, and plot it on a graph or a chart. It's kind of funny. And then finally, I think the last paragraph explains what I was noting, that these documentaries all came out in around this time, so we're kind of available and in the air at a little bit prior to Chad Wolf's family separations policy regarding immigrant families and children. 2 documentaries about the study have been released: The Twinning Reaction 2017 and 3 Identical Strangers 2018, along with the television episode Secret Siblings 2018. So this is a couple of years prior to Chad Wolf's practices, and we definitely will get to that. All right, so I was talking about the weekly world news and abducted by aliens thing, and their headlines, and how in a certain way that I was utilizing that idea in that image, of Chad and his other alien half, whose purpose was to destroy all intelligent life in the Trump universe. Here are some examples of some covers: Baby born with tattoo of solar system, aliens abduct cheerleaders, Bat child found in cave, Bat boy leads cops on 3-state chase, first photos of heaven, more Bat child, final issue of Weekly World News. It looks like we got Sasquatch and a few other things. Princess Diana is alive. I touched Bigfoot. I think that's what's her name? I can't remember. I think she was married to Eddie Van Halen. I can't remember her name. I'm sorry. Titanic survivors found on board. More Bat boy. Amazing man has lived 16 times. Woman gives birth to angel baby. Computer virus spreads to humans. More Bat boy. A lot of Bat boy. I was Bigfoot's love slave. Oh, Valerie Bertinelli. I just remembered her name. There she is. Bat boy, Bat boy, Bat boy. A lot of Bat boy. They really like the Bat boy. More on Bat boy. Just close out with Bat boy since can't seem to get Bat boy in focus here. Oh, there he goes. Okay, so and here's the New York Post. Grand Theft Ottoman, communism. Oh, there he is, looking great. He's Donald again, our great hero Donnie. So he's just like the contrast, black and white, thinking good versus evil. The white guy's good, everybody else is bad. These evil Democrats, and look how ridiculous they are, but all things Trump are awesome. We like baseball, I guess, so they probably understand the rhubarb slang. I want to get into Braveheart. Here's another one, that goes right into the whole Mel Gibson thing, the crazy Mel Gibson. Bad guys, good guys, bad guys, good guys. You get the idea. So it plays with the the ridiculousness of papers like Weekly World News and the almost equally ridiculous set or conglomeration of misinformation that's produced by the rhubarb Morlockian universe. See, I don't think I. All things Trump, positive, all things against Trump or or outside of the Trump universe, bad. All right, let's see. So that's going on there in that particular form. And then here's an article from American Oversight, Chad Wolf's legacy of loyalty under Trump, from his involvement in early discussions about the family separation policy, so I'm not just making this stuff up, to his participation in some of the former president's most undemocratic action. Wolf faces a number of questions about his role as acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary. DHS is Department of Homeland Security Secretary. Okay, so, and then I don't know what this these lines are apparently like from some phone conversation or from some other text messaging or something, and then something ICE CBP to run a process to get some stats on percentage of FAMU. We separated, I guess. If you can take photos, but I don't know if you can take photos, but that would be good. Focus on conditions, what they tell minors and parents when they are separated. Anyway, all evidence that they were in fact separating children and parents, and that was part of the policy, and they all knew about it. I'll go ahead and read some of this stuff just because it's the kind of documentation that I believe it was Tucker Carlson was asking for when a reporter pointed out that his replacement theory or whatever it was about how white folks were being replaced in the United States with non-white folks was racist, and he said, when did I ever say white? And then because the reporter didn't have the documentation immediately ready, then everyone thought this was a great success on his part, even though it was actually pretty easy to document when I looked it up. But and when I did document it on what's the guy, is his name Charlie Kirk or something like that, on his site. He's one of these young pundits that supports all these conspiracy theories and weirdness. But what is his name? It doesn't much matter. They're almost all the same. But put it up on there, since he had the clip of Tucker Carlson's, or is it Tucker Carlson or Carlson Tucker? I always get that mixed up because neither one of them is really either a first or a last name. But I think it's Tucker Carlson, and yeah, that would make sense because he's from that whatever it is that Danish, or is it Danish or it's, I don't know, some maybe, I don't want him to sue me because I called him Danish and he's really Swedish or something, but that Swanson Dinner Company, right? He's from that rich company that had us all eating TV dinners out of tin trays, back in the 50s and 60s, I guess. The Carlsons, right? I don't know if Scandinavians really do. I don't think Scandinavians actually eat TV dinners, but they sell them here in the United States. So it's Tucker, not Carlson Tucker, but Tucker Carlson. We figured that out. We used inferential logic, an abductive inference. We talked about. We didn't talk about it. Turkey talked about it. Turkey talked about abductive inference, and it's the philosopher who discusses what an abductive inference is, and that happens to be Charles Saunders Peirce, the American philosopher and language theorist from the late 19th century here in the United States. Anyway, let's go on. Politico reported on Tuesday that Chad Wolf, who served as the chief of staff to the Secretary of Homeland Security while the department was systematically separating children from their families, and who went on to become acting secretary as President Trump was increasingly weaponizing DHS, Department of Homeland Security, for his political aims, is starting a DC consulting firm along with a few of his DHS, Department of Homeland Security colleagues, because everybody always uses their positions and their, in quotation marks, expertise to make more money. The path from government service to lucrative consulting gigs is well-traveled. Oh, I just said that. In Wolf's case, it's a return. He lobbied DHS on behalf of a number of private companies before joining the department in 2017. During Wolf's years at Department of Homeland Security, his former clients raked in $160 million in Department of Homeland Security contracts. I wonder why these people want to be a part of the government again. Oh yeah, because it's lucrative, because they make money. But as Wolf attempts to re-enter the world of high-powered government influence, he'll likely have to answer questions about the role he played in implementing some of the Trump administration's cruelest and most undemocratic policies. I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks so, even though there is, in fact, no intelligent life in the Trump universe at this time due to the twins, finding one another, the twins, whose purpose was precisely that, to end intelligent life here on planet Earth. In a and as an example of the success of the elimination of intelligent life in the American universe, Trump won a second term, right? And that would be enough evidence to constitute that fact in and of itself. In a September 2020 congressional hearing, Wolf denied that he helped to develop the policy that led to the separation of thousands of migrant families, saying that it was not my portfolio. Oh, but the new portfolio is perfectly ethical and just, I'm sure, and was not my issue set at that time. Was not my issue set at that time. Weird way to put it, but was not my issue set at that time. Yet documents that American Oversight obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, I guess, it wasn't locked until 2065. Like, what was the psychiatrist's name that locked up the information? Weiss? Or I'm not sure. To 2006. Let's go back. Let's see. Neubauer. Neubauer realized that, it wouldn't look good if all of it came out, locked up the records to 2065. All right, so I guess that didn't happen, and Oversight, was able to get a hold of this information, even though Wolf, denied it. But interestingly enough, the information itself, says otherwise. Yet documents that American Oversight obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, which again, may not exist for very long if individuals like Kash Patel, end up, being directors of the Central Intelligence Agency, which should not be confused with, Turkey's new appointment as chief administrator of the Stochastic Intelligence Agency of a contracting fee through Theta. But if Kash Patel actually managed to take over this role, oh yes, and it's not the CIA, is it? It's the FBI. Now, it was the CIA that Iron Cross Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, when he came to the White House on January 6th or perhaps January 5th with his plans, for creating and enacting an insurrection against the Capitol that he shared with Donald Trump, that he wrote in those plans that Kash Patel should be redirected to acting Central Intelligence Agency chief, right? But that's not what Kash Patel is nominated for in Trump's new administration. He's actually nominated for the chief or head of the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. So he didn't quite make it, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as we've discussed, and the Secret Service, seem to have, an older and perhaps more and in that sense, more traditional relationship to the office of the presidency than the CIA, which I don't know, for some reason for me seems particularly and peculiarly, a modern agency and a modern, organization of spy networks and national security, production elements. But yes, Kash Patel, as perhaps, I mean, we'll see, future chief of the FBI, and whoever turns out to be the future chief of the Central Intelligence Agency, may decide that the Freedom of Information Act is just something a little too radical for us here in the former democracy of the United States, and we don't really need it anymore. But for the time being, we seem to still have it, as well as media reports and government investigations show that Wolf was involved in high-level discussions of the administration's zero-tolerance policy beginning months before it was implemented at a large scale. In December 2017, Wolf, then serving as chief of staff to Secretary Christian Nielsen, sent Justice Department official Gene Hamilton, a key player in the development of the family separation policy, a list of potential immigration policy options, including the idea to separate family units. Later in the month, he helped Nielsen for a conversation with then White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, giving her a list of topics to discuss with Kelly that included border search policy operations, separate families. In the following months, documents obtained by American Oversight showed that Wolf was included in a number of discussions about the development of the family separation policy and how to communicate about it to the public. So not only did he help develop it, but he was involved in the propaganda machine around which it would be euphemized, I guess, in terms of its digestibility, in relationship to public opinion on the separation of children and parents. In May 2018, Department of Homeland Security and the Justice Department officially implemented the policy that led to large-scale separation of migrant families. Although the Trump administration had been ramping up family separations throughout the previous year, the next month, as the public outcry over family separations grew, Wolf advised an external affairs official on how to paint a sunnier picture. So again, part of the propaganda machine, sunnier picture of separations for members of Congress who were visiting Department of Homeland facilities, seeing it with their own eyes. But like some of these people, even if you see it with your own eyes, they don't see it because they're listening to the spin, and the listening to the spin gets in the way of what's in front of their own eyes. And I guess that's, how people digest the rhubarb Morlockian, disinformation universe as well. As long as there's enough spin, they don't see the fact that or understand, or comprehend, I guess perceive and interpret, very well, like the evidence in front of their own eyes, like this idea of how somehow tariffs are going to save the United States when it just means all the prices of your local Walmart goods are going to go up, and it's not going to affect China because China is just going to up the prices. And you think Walmart's going to go out of business? And if Walmart did go out of business, there would be such an outcry from those folks that tend to vote for Trump that even the Trump universe would have to address it, right? So it's not going to happen. But if quietly and miserably people just have to pay $88.92, for everything that they buy at the local Walmart, then perhaps no one will notice because the spin's there, and all that rhubarb Morlock or Ruperturbation Morlock has to say is that somehow it's Hillary's fault that all the prices at Walmart went up in 2025,
And it would be like, yeah, because of the conspiracy theory of whatever it is, the pizza is poisoning the brains of the Walmart executives, and they don't know what they're doing, and it's all because of the lizard people and whatever else might be. But that's somehow a more compelling explanation than the tariffs caused a economic crisis. But anyway, well that's what that's what the separation of the brain from the body does, right? As in the project of the alien twins, to eradicate all intelligent life in the Trump universe. This was a misleading message. Let's see, did I miss something? Let's go back. In May 2018, Department of Homeland Security and the Justice Department officially implemented the policy that led to a large-scale separation of migrant families, although the Trump administration had been ramping up family separations throughout the previous year. The next month, as the public outcry over family separations grew, Wolf advised an external affairs official on how to paint a sunnier picture of separations for members of Congress who were visiting Department of Homeland Security facilities, including by focusing on the process to reunify families. Okay, so there was an outcry basically from the public, and then like Wolf advised, his officials how to get Congress to go and like take a look at this stuff and then spin it, right? And then report back to the American people, like as if none of this really were all about spin, but it was all about spin, from the very outset. This was a misleading message, obviously, like based on the master design of this like almost conspiratorial sunnier picture version of children in cages. As the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General later found, Department of Homeland Security was unprepared to implement the family separation policy and struggled to identify, track, and unify families. So they couldn't even find the families to reunify. So they hadn't asked enough information and documented enough, like that their initial separations could be repaired at all. So like it wasn't part of a plan to reunify, because they would have required like a whole different strategy from the beginning. More than 2 years later, court documents revealed that the government had still failed to locate the families of 666 children. Wow, interesting number, right? And doesn't that tell? I mean, give me a break. Doesn't that tell you something about Mr. Wolf right there? This, I mean, seriously, Chad, you're not concerned about your relationship to the ultimate evil and/or Q-Maganon and/or the great beast, in Greek, Mega Therion, who we variously referred to in relationship to the Trump campaign as the MAGA Therion, in one way or another. And if you click on the Beast Revelation, it takes you to the Beast Revelation. This is from the book of John of Patmos called Apocalyptos, which is just Greek for the revealing or the revelation. And I believe in that particular chapter of various examples of the Christian Bible that at least the King James version, right? The number of the great beast is 666. So anyway, let's get back to Chad Wolf. 666 children whom they had separated from family members. When those ongoing separations were revealed in October 2020, Wolf claimed that the parents, quote, had chosen to separate their children from themselves. It's like what Trump is saying, or just said about his pardoning of all the January 6ers, and if someone said, but they killed the police officers, and his response was, they had no choice, right? So in that instance, they had no choice. It seems very unlikely that they didn't have a choice to kill a police officer. I've been in situations where police officers were combative and assaultive to me, but I chose not to attempt to kill them, it doesn't seem like in that situation you don't have a choice. It seems like you have a choice. Like you may not have a choice between being arrested and not running away, but you have a choice not to kill them, certainly. In this instance, it doesn't seem like the parents had a choice, because it wasn't the parents who separated themselves from their children. It was rather the Department of Homeland Security. So it's interesting when people are, when they are when someone claims that they have had a choice, and when someone claims that they haven't. But curious. In April 2019, Nilsen was forced to resign, one of the earliest salvos in a purge, widely linked to White House advisor Stephen Miller, everyone's favorite, autistic fascist or fascist on the spectrum, of top DHS leaders who were seen as insufficiently committed to former President Donald Trump's hardline immigration priorities. Wolf survived, but not for very long, remember? And in November 2019 was named acting secretary of the department. And that didn't that didn't last too long. It lasted until January 6th, or perhaps a day or two before January 6th, or a day or two after. I think it was January 6th or 7th. And then, because of Wolf's response, and even Wolf, recognizing the incident of January 6th as a violent insurrection, kind of halted his progress in relationship to becoming, permanent, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, as far as Trump was concerned, because Trump wanted everybody to be on the same team in relationship to the events of January 6th, and Wolf did come out and call it what it was. As Secretary, Wolf attempted to downplay his agency's cooperation with We Build the Wall, and that makes me want to play that song, Why We Build the Wall, My Children, My Children. The privately run campaign, Fiverr, stop please. That's Fiverr in the background, barking at, whatever it might be who's walking outside the house. At this time it's 7:08, so it's light outside, so people start to stand in front of the house. The privately run campaign to raise money to pay for the border wall, one of Trump's top priorities. Records we obtained include interesting use of "we" right there, like suddenly a self-identification, as oversight as oversight. We obtained include email communications from January 22 between Chad Nizzle, a different Chad, who was then Wolf's chief of staff, probably liked his name, Chris Kobach, and former Kansas Secretary of State, who was general counsel for We Build the Wall, in which Kobach expressed the desire to rapidly add another mile to the president's total. And we talked about that before, in his need to bulldoze, Catholic orphanages and ecological preserves, because of the destiny of the We Build the Wall project, right? And I think we had a slide on that and discussed, who here is willing to bulldoze an orphanage and destroy a federally, protected, national, wildlife preserve, to please Daddy Pops or Plops or whatever the Orphan Annie reference might be. And of course, it's the world's oldest living baby boy who quickly raises his hand and says, I am. In August 2024, people involved in We Build the Wall, including former House strategist Steve Bannon, were arrested and accused of defrauding supporters for the project. So not only did they support, the destruction of all of these, what we might regard as like important, important, acts of preservation, right? Like the Catholic orphanage and the the wildlife preserve. But all of it was just to get money and to defraud supporters of the proposal in the first place. And as we were noting in at the outset of reading this particular article, those same documents also show that both Wolf and Mizell met with the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, an anti-immigration organization designated by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group. So involved again in American terrorist organizations and hate groups, soon after assuming their new positions in November 2019. Among several communications in one email in which Mizell thanked a FAIR representative for having reached out for a meeting, adding the acting secretary in particular really enjoyed the dialogue with this hate group. While acting Secretary Wolf made his loyalty to Trump clear during the nationwide protests against racial injustice, remember that, we have slides of that and images of that within this Medi-Multi sci-fi com universe as well. And if we haven't seen many of them yet, we'll see more of them in the future. As the former president attempted to bolster his law and order persona in advance of the election, Department of Homeland Security under Wolf's leadership participated in widely criticized shows of force. And then part of the George Lucas universe comes in, because it's pretty clear that Chad Wolf deployed stormtroopers, and there's like some discussion about whether they were actually stormtroopers or not. And then there's this discussion between R2-D2 and C-3PO about whether they're actually stormtroopers. And I think it's R2-D2 that seems to recognize them more clearly as stormtroopers, and C-3PO as with his British accent, saying that Mr. Chad assures him that they look like stormtroopers, but they're not, because it's not an example of a fascist rule. And even though they use tear gas and rubber bullets, we get the idea. Attempted to bolster his law and order persona in advance of the elections, DHS, under Wolf's leadership, participated in widely criticized shows of force, not just shows, but actual force against demonstrators. These are U.S. citizens, from using tear gas, and rubber bullets, to detaining protesters in unmarked vans. A document was obtained via FOIA, shows that one Department of Homeland Security component even requested a helicopter, quote, capable of delivering airborne quick reaction force. And this is, of course, what Trump is threatening all over again, and now threatens to use the military as well, right, in relationship to any protests that might exist against his authoritarian rule of the United States. Response to protests to Washington, D.C. Okay, so in July, Wolf traveled to Portland, Oregon, and then this we have all of this in the story as well. The site of prolonged demonstrations to denounce the protesters as a violent mob, a publicity stunt tacked onto meetings in Las Vegas that we later found cost taxpayers more than $90,000. Wolf's Department of Homeland Security also served Trump's tough on crime posturing through its participation in Operation Legend, a Justice Department initiative that sent federal law enforcement officers to major U.S. cities in the summer of 2020, sometimes going against the wishes of local officials. Emails were obtained through a public records request show that Department of Homeland Security rebuffed the governor of Illinois when his office tried to reach out to Wolf prior to the operation's expansion to Chicago. Instead, the governor's office was told that, quote, no surge in federal officers was taking place. So again, lies, and then not following chain of command, not following the organization of government, willing to do anything for that daddy that he so sought the approval of, even though one mistake, Chad, and you were out. Remember? In the weeks leading up to the 2020 election, Wolf used Department of Homeland Security as a campaign operation for Trump, which is outside the boundaries of the Hatch Act and whatever it is, federal employee, ethical practices, manual, and both of those. And with top leadership, including Wolf himself, traveling to electoral swing states to announce immigration apprehensions and warn of the consequences of change in immigration policy. All, all outside of what the Constitution defines as, fair, democratic electoral practices, right? All right, so we are investigating how much those trips cost. Taxpayers and the Justice Department office handles allegations of public funds spent on political campaigning has opened a case file on the issue. In November 2020, a federal judge found Wolf's appointment to be unlawful, throwing into question the legality. In other words, just like everything else Trump did, from like signing, acts on his desk that, should have been enacted by Congress, to appointments and illegal firings and hirings. His appointment was not made within the lawful conditions of the Constitution. In November 2020, a federal judge found Wolf's appointment to be unlawful, and that appointment was made by Trump. So another act of unconstitutionality on the part of Donald J. Trump, throwing into question the legality of many of the actions he took during his time as acting secretary. But regardless of what becomes of specific policy decisions, Wolf's legacy of loyalty to Trump and the former president's most undemocratic impulses remains. Okay, so that's enough on that particular slide. Let's move on to the next one. See if I can talk about this one. Okay, so there he is again, Mr. Wolf. Both sides of his face now belong to the that entity who we generally refer to as Chad Wolf, former secretary or acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, although illegally appointed as such by that president-elect who is so good at violating the Constitution and enacting illegal policies. And he is saying here, I'm only 2/3 white supremacist on my father's side. And I guess that plays to the split in his image on the other one. And then this play with, genetic theory, I guess, because we had the whole thing with the nature versus nurture and genetic argument with the separation of the twins. And so you can't be 2/3, right, of anything, because if you do the genetic, math, everything has to be a fraction of what is the word that I'm looking for? A power of 2, right? So 2 times 2 is 4. So you can be 1, or you can be a half, or you can be a quarter, or you can be an 1/8, or you can be a 16th, or but I guess it's not a power of 2, is it? Yeah, it's a power of 2. So, but you can't be a 2/3, right? Okay, so that kind of plays with this whole incompetence and math thing that the title down here. The caption down below says, "World's oldest living frightened little boy," I think we've been calling him Baby Boy, and recipient of the Trump Honorary Genius Award. So the Genius Award refers to his a misunderstanding of genetics and the 2/3, I guess, and also the 2/3 relates to various moments in the history of the United States where people were recognized as less than people for the purpose of counting population, and so it refers to a history of slavery and another separation, right? I guess the separation of North and South that is less, and which also could be a separation of families. I mean, depending on one's personal history at that time. Honorary Genius Award interviews for one of those new highly stable government positions. Of course, it turned out not to be very highly stable at all. None of them were, and none of them will be. Trump goes through position members, as I often say, like a pancake house goes through butter. And it'll be the same with all of these folks, no matter how kooky and loyalist they are, because they're utterly and entirely incompetent. And once they do something that gets them in trouble, Trump will dump them so that he doesn't get in trouble. But anyway,
I'm only 2/3 white supremacist on my father's side, but cognitively, and it refers to Trump's cognitive test, I test positive in the MOV lineage. Oh, let's see. MOV. I'm trying to remember what MOV is. Oh, boy. Well, it's not coming to mind just right off the top of my head. What I'll have to think about what MOV as an acronym, might represent, and if it comes to me, I'll get back to my viewers and listeners in a future production of In the Grip of ThermostatAnon. And if anyone out there remembers what it means and wants to let me know, you can do so via the use of space-time travel communication coordinates, whether they're complex, simple, or even more complex. And go ahead and do that, and then if that helps, and if I get it, if I understand what you're saying, then I'll put that in the next installment of In the Grip of ThermostatAnon. But for the time being, I just can't remember what the move, obviously it's a reference to some sort of idea of move, like to move, like if there were an E on the end. But I'm not entirely sure what the individual letters represent within this acronymic organization. So sorry, I test positive in the MOV lineage. Mothers of veterans? No, I don't think so. Everyone says they can see her, she/her in my eyes. Now again, I just remembered. Okay, so the she is the clue to get you to what this means. Haha, that's so funny. She/her instead of see her got me there. Okay, so you know what MOV means is mother of violence, and fear is the mother of violence. Totally makes sense, right? So that's why he's the oldest living frightened little baby boy, and his mother is fear, and he is violence, right, enacted against children and families and immigrants and all things that he sees as being not him. Even though there was surely a time when his ancestors came here from someplace in Europe. He's doesn't look real native to me. And then he makes a list of all the things that he thinks are going to appeal to Donald and the Christian right, against divorce, marital separation. Oh yeah. So all of these things, in one way or another, I guess, in the beginning of the list, are kind of ironic because they involve separation. So he's like bragging about how he's against these forms of separation, marital separation and divorce. And yet, he enacts these separations of families, right? Okay, so those two, and then infidels. He doesn't like infidels. Hooligans, it's not hugs, it's thugs. The T got cut off. Bums, and these are all words that, Trump used to describe immigrants and asylum seekers in 2020, and continues, although the words have gotten nastier, you'll notice, now, and more violent and more stochastic terrorist producing. But SOBs, that one's pretty easy, I think. SOBs may be something else, like maybe something more complicated than just the ordinary SOBs, but I think if you just get the ordinary SOBs, you got it. Mother of violence was a little bit more difficult for us to figure out, but that she somehow, instead of C, I don't know. So that may be an error, but it may just be there to, for whatever, as a mnemonic to help inspire me to remember what MOV was. SOBs, kneeling anywhere other than in the alt-white church, and consider myself a family man, even though he separates the families. I still have trouble shaving. That's a reference to the it never seems to be shaved. I don't know why. I mean, how do you even do that? How do you always have 2 days growth of beard if you always have it? Like, does he have like
an electric razor and then you don't, and you put it on a setting and then you don't shave all the way, and then, but why would you do that? I mean, because you think that looks cool. I mean, he doesn't have much of a chin, and that was a Don Johnson thing in Miami Vice. Is it a reference to Miami Vice? I don't know. I mean, I don't get it, and I don't get, like, to me it would just be easier to shave every day, but or not. I guess he could do the Ted Barbarian Cruise thing, and come up with a haircut that would match it a little better. It'd be weird to have that hairstyle and then have the Ted Barbarian Cruise beard, but I mean, to each his own. So I don't know. I still have trouble shaving on my own, but Mom comes over to help every second or third Tuesday, and then of course Mom would be mother of violence. And then I'm also very good at counting backwards by 45, and I think that has a lot of references. I think one of them obviously is to the 45th president, and backwards being like, let's reenact what we did in 2016 by illegal means, but it probably also relates to the 25-25 movement that was established by Rudy Drippy Giuliani, and remember having the Q-MAGAnon movement survive into the year 25-25, and there was some confusion about how that would work because election years only occur every fourth year, and hence even over all of those centuries, we would never have an election in if it did survive to 25-25. We wouldn't have a 25-25 election, would we? That's not a conceivable number for an election year, and so this perhaps is Chad Wolf's solution set for that problem, that the 2025 movement that is represented in those images with Rudy and the thrones and Rudy and the red horns represent. I think that's about all. There's his information that he's currently lying about. I think that's all we need to say for today. And we'll return next time, and we may still be talking about Mr. Chad Wolf, and we'll probably enter the more of that George Lucas universe that Mr. Wolf was so much a part of producing, both in Washington D.C. and in Portland.